and they'd hitchhike down the railroad track. So they found a job someplace. And as soon as they could get $2 together, they'd go back and get her wedding ring out. And when she was a little girl, because I'd forgotten about that, there was something come up about the Indians here one time. When she was a little girl, Indians would come through. And when word came out that the Indians were coming, a tribe of them, they'd all run and gather up their cats and dogs. well, the Indians would take them. That was food for them.
And eat them.
Mom and Grandma had one of those sewing machines with a head up on the top, you know, and it had a cabinet over the top of it. And they'd stick the dogs and cats in. If the Indians heard that sound in that machine, you know, they didn't know what it was. Well, the kids would start that pedal going down below, and they'd think it was the pedal squeaking, so they didn't find their cats and dogs. And but then Papa, they came to Topeka then, just before the 1903 flood. Because Carl was born here in 1902, right down there on 4th and Chandler, in that big old two-story house that stood on the corner, 4th and Chandler.
Yeah, right down the street from there.
And Papa worked for the Santa Fe. And then when the flood came through, they had transferred him down to Argentine. And that's where they lost everything they had in the flood. And then that's when they transferred him then to Marceline. So Marceline was the round table. And then but for some reason he began, his lungs, he was coughing up blood. So they
Black lung?
Yeah,
Mine?
that was the beginning then of his black lung disease. Well, they sent him down to New Mexico for that, in that climate. And he stayed down there for quite a while, but when he came back to Marceline, then he went back into coal mines.
What was this thing in Marceline about Disney?
Well, Walt Disney lived in Marceline for a while. Went to school with Carl. Because we had the movie theater there in Marceline when they were going to show a certain film. Walt Disney would draw the designs to show what the picture was about. That was the beginning of his career. And I remember going to these movies with Papa and Mama. The Eskimo ice cream bar you buy now. Well, they were selling that when I was a little girl for a nickel a bar, you know. And that was our treat when we went to the movies, was to get one of those little Eskimo ice cream bars. And I don't know where the Disney Channel went after that. But that's what was the beginning of his career, was drawing these designs for this old movie theater.
Yeah, Mary, you helping with his homework or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they lost track of him, you know, until they heard he got into Hollywood there. That's where he really got his start then.
Well, where did you wind up that Dad met you?
Well, that was in Emmett. See, when the Depression hit so hard, the coal mines began to close down, and Papa was working in the coal mines, and then he was standing bar at a saloon in Marceline, a regular old saloon, with the swinging doors like you see on Gunsmoke, because it was for an old man. Hill was his last name. And that's where they had, I was listening to a show the other day on television. Go back in your childhood. Just important things. And where you lived, a certain house or something. And we had this big suburban place. It had a big old two-story house with a big pillar post, you know, in front. And that's where Mama had all her chickens and the cow, old Bossy, and or her Chester white pigs. That was the only kind she would raise. It had a big fruit orchard, and Carl had his hunting dogs. What do you call them? Brittany, the Brittany Spaniel, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we lived at the time when Eddie had married Joe Elson, and they had separated, and Imogene was just a baby when they separated, and she came back home to live with Mom and Daddy, and she went to work for the bank in Marceline as a teller. And Mama would tie a dish towel over our heads. All the women did that at that time. Oh, shoot. Get that right quick. People won't know who was in. But Papa would come home in the evening from the coal mine, you know. I was trying to milk old Bossy. And we turned her out and she went up over a hill to graze during the daytime. So Mama was raised in Imogene along with me. We were just 6 months apart in age. And we just little codponies down here, about 3 years old. Never will forget Mama always, we'd line up at the door and she'd tie a dish towel around her head for some reason. I don't know what that was for. And we'd go out with Papa and he'd put a couple ears of corn in a bucket. And we'd go out the bottom of the hill and he'd rattle that bucket with those ears of corn in it and holler Bossy, and we'd holler Bossy. And up over the hill she would come. She's an old black and white cow with her tail in the air, and into the barn she'd go. And we had to go in there, of course, with our kiddies, you know, and Papa would squirt milk to them, and he'd squirt milk to us. And that's where we lived there for quite a while until, they closed coal mines. And things were getting so rough around Marceline at the beginning of the Depression, you know. And we left there and moved to on the other side of town to a smaller place. And that's where Papa and Carl went to Nebraska to work on the pipeline out there they were laying. And that's where Carl met Burl, and they were married there. And we stayed in Marceline, Mama and Lester and me. We stayed there in Marceline. And Papa would send money home, you know, to help take care of us. Mama took in washing. It was hard. Times were hard. And that's where Lester and I had the measles so bad we almost died from it. And finally, Papa went to Illinois to work, and Carl came to Kansas to Eudora. And so that's when he came and got us, and we moved to Eudora and lived with them for a while. So Papa come back and then we came to Topeka. And he went to work for some construction companies, the Watts Construction Company.
Still going today.
And that's where he was into his cement finishing work. So
That would have been when, in the 30s?
no, that was still in the 20s. We were still in the 20s then. And so that's where I went to the old Lincoln School. And Lester and I both went to the old Lincoln School.
When did Depression really start hitting?
The 20s. Don't you remember you hear about the 29?
So it actually started in the early 20s.
Yeah, it did. I was just a little girl when it started because that's where we lost everything we had. We could no longer make payments on that house that we were buying in Marceline. Mama had to sell off all her.
Well, you met Daddy at Emmett?
Yeah. We had Carl. Papa we were living here in Topeka, and Carl had got a job with the Sinclair Pipeline Company at Elmont.
That's when he was walking that deal?
That's when he walked that line for leaks. Well, then Carl got a chance to go to some other little town around here for the car salesman, because he was always experimenting, you know, from different jobs. Well, then he recommended that Papa get the job at Elmont. So we moved into Elmont, and Papa walked that line until they closed that.
No, he walked there from where to where?
Well, he walked from Elmont to Aiken Switch.
Which is where?
Well, that was on west of Emmett. And he stayed with the family up there overnight, the Ketter family. There's some of them here in Topeka now. Some of their grandchildren.
What was her name?
Ketter was the last name. There was, I can't remember the kids' names anymore. But then the next morning he'd get up and he'd walk back to Elmont. Well, then from Elmont he would go out, you know where Newman Quarter is?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he'd go out there and walk back. And that was what he was doing.
How long did it take him to make his round?
Well, so many days at a time, you know. He had places he stayed.
My God.
Yeah. And then that all blew up with the Depression, and everybody that was working at Elmont lost their job. And while he was walking the line to Aiken Switch, that's where that ranch, the Browning and Brown Ranch, was located. Well, it's between Aikens and Emmett. And somebody from there had been over to Ketter's and made the remark that they were going to had to hire a new man. So when Daddy got a hold of Brown, why, he said, well, sure, he'd come up there and work. So Brown sent a truck down to Topeka here to bring our stuff up to Emmett. It's that little shanty we call on the railroad track. And then that's where I met your dad in Emmett.
What was he doing there?
Well, he was just a ranch hand.
The cowboy.
Well, he never rode a horse.
Yeah, Butte?
That was Lester. No, that was the Butte was your dad's horse. But Lester rode horseback. He rounded up cattle for him. Poppy usually drove a wagon, or the hay wagon, and did the chores around the place and worked out in the fields and such as that. And then
I know he was proud of that horse, though.
That's where Lester died. We probably lived there. Well, then when I met your dad, see, that was the time when Grandpa May moved to Emmett.
Mm-hmm.
From wherever it was. I don't remember that, but I know your dad was farming at Latimer. And because he sold off everything he had back there except a couple teams of horses and Butte. Old Butte.
That's the stuff that Grandpa sold, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Dad come home and the team of horses be gone, and Grandpa sold it.
He sold it, which was a good price. That time he had $600 from what he'd sold off his farm. And he brought the Canes with him, Emma and Levi Kane.
Grandpa did?
Well, they rode up from Latimer with your dad on the wagon. And Emma she always wore her hose rolled down, and she stuck that $600 in there, in her rolled down hose. Well, they got up to Emmett. Well, your dad took his livestock down to the livestock yard. And Emma and Levi was going to work for Grandpa. Emma was the cook at that hotel. And Levi did odd jobs. He was sick with something or other, so he did odd jobs, worked for Grandpa. And that's when, whenever your dad needed any money, it was slowly disappearing. As much money as Grandpa was bringing in. And because when we got married, your dad knew for sure he ought to have $600 in Grandma's wardrobe closet. And when we went to get it, it was all gone. And he went to work down at the elevator. And one day, this man drove up, and your dad looked out this team of horses. Damn, they looked familiar. And the harness, it was all new. And he went up, as he walked by one of them, he called it by the name, you know, that he called him, and the horse pricked up his ears. And he asked Reuben Forsythe, where'd you get that team? Oh, he said, I bought it from your dad. And so that left, the other team went to, this car Susie got that just left Butte, his black pony.
He was saddled.
Oh, that's a
beautiful horse. I've seen the pictures.
Then Grandpa, your daddy, bought that new Model A Ford, his convertible. And the salesman would come out to Emmett to pick up the payments for it. And unbeknownst to him, Daddy would leave his payment with Grandma. And Grandpa was having the receipt made out to him. So after we were married, we moved out and lived with my folks, so Browns then had to lay off help. Well, of course, we got it. We was going to come back to Topeka. And so your dad would say, well, we'll just sell the Ford. We'd already sold our other car, folks' car, the Chevy. When he went to sell it, he found out he couldn't sell it because it belonged to Grandpa.
That's a mean old man. I ain't kidding you.
Well,
that dude had nothing but larceny in his heart.
At the time when he was doing this faith healing, well, my dad was making $40 a month working on that ranch. That was 7 days a week.
Yeah.
The 6 days from sun up till sundown. And then on Sunday was chore time. Well, anything else came up, it had to be done. That old man was clearing about $500 a week.
In the Depression era.
Yeah. Because the cars would come up there from all over the state of Kansas. People came in from Nebraska, Missouri, Oklahoma. There were cars cars would be lined up for blocks, and the merchants just went crazy with all they were selling, you know. And still, we were struggling along. All the kids were. We could just barely make ends meet on what jobs that they had. And he was squandering his money. He started up actually almost like a zoo. He had a bear and coyotes, had a whole string of monkey cages with monkeys in them, and inside the house was another zoo of parrots, some of them shipped in from Africa, you know, all kinds of rare birds. It was just like a zoo in there. There was a business out on Gage Boulevard that sold rare birds and things. And he practically kept them in business. And that's where all his money went. Well, then when the Depression really hit, people could no longer afford the gas to come up there.
Yeah.
Well, his business fell too, flat on its face. He didn't have anything left. And there was nothing for him to do as far as work was concerned. And his contract had run out with Emmett. They'd had to move out of that hotel, and he had to move to a smaller place where he had to pay rent. And so that's when Lucille's folks suggested that they all move to Emmett or to Wilson and run that recreation parlor. And we went out there for a year. That's where Joe was born. When Mom and Papa came back to Topeka. Well, when they moved to Texas, we were left stranded in Wilson. We had no job. There was no jobs to be had, not even farm work. And so that's when we bought that little old Ford and came to Topeka and lived with my folks.
So that'd been about 38 or 39.
No.
Joe was born in 30 what?
37. Joe was born in 1937. See, Don was born in 33. And then Joe came in 37. And that's about the time we came back to Topeka then.
37.
Yeah. And they lived there on Lake. That's where we moved in with them there. And then to get a bigger place then, after they both had left to work, we moved over there on Forest in Oakland. And that's where we were living when we heard about that place on Swigert. And Mom and Papa had been living with an elderly man up on Monroe Street. He was a retired tailor. He was well off. Well, that's where they got hooked too, just like their dad had. He asked them if they would stay with him till he died. He would deed that house to them. It was a nice old home, nicely furnished. Well, he had a sister-in-law, you know, was greedy. And the day he died, so Mama and Papa took care of him. They took care of him just like a patient in a hospital, you know. And Mama did the cooking and the housework. Papa took care of the yard. And the day he died, the first thing that woman did was come in and get that safe out of that house. And in the safe was his will. And he had showed that to them, where they were to get the house. Well, they had a smart lawyer, of course, and they said he was incompetent. So to get something back for their work, though, because they worked hard. I had visited them there, and they worked hard taking care of that old man, going up and downstairs, you know. So they hired a lawyer, and they gave him $600 for wages.
Oh, boy.
Well, at that time, that was a lot of money.
Yeah.
And that's when then folks moved from there. That's when they moved down on Lake, and then on over on Forest. And we had to have a $50 down payment on this house.
On Swigert?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they loaned us the money for it. Well, they just gave it to us because they knew we couldn't pay it back. We didn't have anything to pay it back with. And then they left the place over on Forest and moved over there on Chandler Street. In the 400 block on Chandler. Real nice little house in there. And that's where they were living when Papa's health began to fail so badly. And he was a night watchman out at the airport, out at Billard Airport. I don't know whether it was Billard did or not, but that was what he was doing. So his health failed completely. And they went on what they call old age assistance. And they had rented a cheaper house over on, I believe it was Hancock or Klein, up in there. It was a nice house. It was a lot cheaper than what they were paying for there. I think it was about $10 a month, and they were paying about $15 a month over there on Chandler. And Mama and your dad had went up, packed up everything at the house, had everything all ready to move, and the movers was to be there the next morning. Well, then when your dad got up at 5 o'clock to go to work, well, Papa was so bad he had to sit up all the time and he couldn't get his breath. And he was sitting in a rocking chair out in my kitchen. And Mama had stayed up with him till about 4 o'clock that morning. When he told her, he thought, well, he's getting sleepy. So she went on to bed. Well, sometime between 4 o'clock and the 5 when we got up, well, he just laid his head on his chest and died.
Like Grandma May.
Yeah.
Just sitting there and just gone.
Just as peaceful as could be. And so they had already paid the month's rent on the house up there. So after the funeral then, why, we moved Mama up there. She stayed there for quite a while. And we got her affair straightened out. Well, then she rented that house next door to us, you know. Who owned it then? What was his name?
On Chandler?
No, on Swigert.
Which one of the houses?
Well, the corner house. There was a corner house
Disney's old house?
No. Where the vacant lots are next to me now? Well, there was a house there.
Where old not Disney, but...
No. Harry.
Where Buchanan lived? Or what was her name?
Herrick lived there when you were a little boy. Had the beehives. Don't you remember Johnny and Lily Herrick with all those kids?
Yeah, what's that lawyer's name? John?
Oh, Bohannon.
His mother lived there.
Yeah, well, she bought that place from the real estate dealer. Now, the man there...
Okay, what was the name of the Herricks that lived there?
John and Lily Herrick.
And they had the boys.
Oh, they had a big family.
Yeah, I remember that.
There's one of the Herrick boys that's, what's he got here, a repair shop, automobile repair shop?
Yeah, it's a garage.
Something down there. And then Mama moved around from all different places in Topeka till she got so bad then we had to...
She wound up on Lawrence.
Yeah, and that's where she finally fell one night. And they brought her out to my house in an ambulance the day I came home from the hospital with Susie. And we brought her out there.
Because I barely remember Grandma Lundquist.
And she stayed there with us for a few months.
Because they lived next door to the Scotts.
Yeah. And I got her up on her feet, got her health built up where she could walk again. But the doctor told us that she couldn't live alone. So that's when she decided that she didn't want to stay there. She went to a nursing home. And that's where she...
I don't even remember that.
Mm-hmm. Jensen's nursing home.
The only thing I remember is when she lived in the house on Lawrence.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even remember her coming to our house.
Yeah, well, she did.
Now, when you bought Swigert, it was, what, 3 rooms?
No, it was a 5-room house. The front room and the living room, or the living room and the dining room, which we call the dining room, was the original house.
Okay, that's what I've heard.
That front porch, that's there yet. That's the original front porch. And then somebody bought it, and they built those 2 bedrooms on the north side.
Okay, the front one and the middle one.
Yeah, and then Crawford's bought it. Ern Crawford, anyway.
Was this the Crawford across 4th Street?
No, that was a different. He was the Crawford he was a musician. He played trumpet with all these big bands here in Topeka.
Mm.
And his folks had bought the place, and they died. So Ern took the place over, and he'd rented it to a family, the Quarleses, that lived here in Topeka. And they couldn't pay their rent. So he decided, well, I'll just sell it and get out from under it. And so he let us have it for $50 down and $12.50 a month payment.
Oh my God!
But his dad had taken what they called it. They built a shed kitchen on there. That was just where the shed roof was over the back porch, Well, they built that into a kitchen and then added that bathroom on there. And then there was just a back porch there. Well, that's what caught on fire
Yeah, I remember.
and
It burned off.
burnt that back end off. And then that was when,
Robinson came in with it.
yeah, and then we built that kitchen and back bedroom and a new bath on.
Oh, when did we dig out the basement?
Well, that was when you were growing up.
That had to have been in the mid-40s,
Yeah,
during the war.
yeah. You weren't very old. We finished that up when,
It was done before the 51 flood.
yeah. We finished that up after Don left for the service. And that's where we've stayed ever since. My gosh.
So we got that house when then?
In 39.
The Swigert house.
Mm-hmm.
Because little Joe
Yeah,
was killed up at 4th and Leland
4th and Leland.
in that wreck.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then I was
And
born.
Papa died in March, and Joe died in October of 1940. And then Mama died in 51, for the 51 flood. And that's when Mrs. Bohannon and her husband had divorced up there at Holton. And she came down to Topeka and she bought that house from the real estate dealer. He had lived there at one time. They said it was one of the prettiest places in that part of town. And she lived there then, you know, so she came down with cancer. And remember she brought her dad, Mr. Backman. He came down to live with her. And that's where, now, her oldest boy, Robert, was already at Manhattan. And John lived there with her, you know, while he was going to law school. And she died, you know, and John married, and he and his wife lived in that little old house, so he got his law practice started. That's the John Bohannon that's got a law practice
Yeah.
that speaks today.
Now, when did Daddy go to Goodyear?
In 42, I think it was.
The year I was born?
Well, yeah. He helped on the construction.
They built Goodyear.
Yeah. And then it seemed to me like it was in 42. I'm not sure on it because, well, he died in 70,
And he had how many years there?
or maybe it was 45. Or
Didn't he have exactly 25 years
Well, he
in?
would have had 25 years in March.
Of
He
70.
died in 70, so that'd make it 45, wouldn't it?
Mhm.
45. Huh?
Yeah, 45 to 70 would be 25 years.
Well,
And he had 25 years in the
he would
year
have
he
had in
died.
March.
He would have had.
Would have had his 25 years in.
So the